Hello, fungi friends. I am going to make Mapo Tofu or Mapo Tofu. It's a pork and soft tofu dish from China, usually the Sichuan region, but there's a lot of different variations. And I'm going to put a bunch of mushrooms in it because I have all these big honkin' shiitake I got out of my yard. I inoculated logs with North Spore shiitake spawn, and North Spore does a great job making spawn, and so shiitakes grew. Got a lot of mushrooms. So many mushrooms, I don't know what to do with them all. And yesterday I was out hunting on the coast, and I managed to find one porcini. I thought I was going to get skunked, but I found one big one, and I cooked it up last night just to kind of make sure it wasn't going anywhere overnight. And pretty excited to... Ooh, what is this little seeds? Like lemon seed. Anyhow, porcini here. So I'm going to dump this in because there's a nice soft texture that'll go well with the tofu. And the shiitake here will add a lot of depth of flavor along with this good pork I got at the farmer's market from like a local grower. What is this? Channel Ranch. Yeah, so I got this at Napa Farmer's Market, which is good because if you're going to eat meat, you want to know where it came from. You want to make sure those animals had a good life. All the above. So feel free to hang out with me while I cook. We're going to be drinking a beer. I got a Montauk watermelon left over from summer. It's kind of fall, so I wish I had like a Marzen instead. But that's what I got. So cheers. We're going to make some Chinese food. Not strictly Chinese necessarily, but essentially a Asian style mushroom gravy with tofu and mushrooms and pork. Because that's what I'm craving. That's what I want right now. Something warm because it's been raining. And the world is... well, it's crazy right now. Like, not to mince words, I'm very upset about what happened in the election. I'm very disappointed in Americans, and I don't feel good. And it doesn't feel like a time where calling for unity makes sense, given the things that are about to happen to this country. I'd rather call for like accountability and sense, even from the people who are in power, that there is some degree of oversight. Because well, not all of us, but some of us who kept tabs on things know what happened in the last Trump presidency and how damaging that was to the environment, the world, progress in all sorts of different ways. But I didn't come on here to talk politics. I'm just down. And if you don't align with me on politics, that's okay. But I am always going to state how I feel and what I think about things. And if you follow me, that's just something that you're going to have to deal with. I don't do it to be derisive. I just do it because I care. And I hope occasionally I can educate people or help them see things differently. But sometimes you can't. People are people. So for anyone that didn't turn away, we're now going to cook a whole buttload of shiitakes. I'm just getting these cut up into smaller pieces that will cook down in a pan for a while before I add the pork. Because when I build a dish like this, I want the mushrooms to cook kind of the longest of any component. Because I started out by doing what's called a dry fry, which you will see here in just a moment. And it is sort of a key technique to cooking mushrooms that I think is really important, and a lot of people don't know that this is how they should do it. Basically, let me just show you what my pan looks like. It's very explanatory. Sorry, might come around this way. My stand here is a little stuck. There we go. All right. So there's nothing in the pan, right? It's dry. Mushrooms going. No oil, no butter. This is the opposite of what most mushroom recipes tell you to do. They tell you to fry them in a bunch of oil and butter. And that would work fine with these shiitakes because they're dry enough. But for a lot of wild mushrooms, chanterelles especially, they have so much liquid that if you add the fat first and you put the mushrooms in it, the mushrooms like cook all the water out, and then you don't actually ever really get a nice meaty mushroom because the mushrooms are sort of like sloppy and insipid because they don't lose all their moisture. It's like a sponge. You got to squeeze it out to really put other flavors and good stuff into your mushrooms. So doing this dry fry is a essential first step to cooking mushrooms. And I know when I started doing it, it gave me all sorts of anxiety because it's like they're gonna like burn in the pan or something. And no, they'll be fine. You know, you don't need to do it over like the highest heat possible, but I've got mine usually about medium high. I do my dry fry, and then later on, when they're more cooked, I take them down to like a medium low and let them brown up. But around that time, I add some oil too, because once the mushroom starts kind of sticking in the pan, that's when you've completed your dry fry, and you add some fat, and then they will get nice and meaty and crispy. And it's wonderful. It's a really good small change you can make when you cook mushrooms, and it makes a huge difference. And I've had so many people, because I evangelized this method. It's certainly not one I came up with. It's just one that was shared with me when I joined the mushroom community, and has been really influential on how I cook mushrooms. And you know, I've tried it out with a lot of different things and sort of agree that's pretty much always the best way to go about cooking mushrooms. Start with a dry fry. There's, you know, very few exceptions. You know, if I'm gonna like batter and deep fry a mushroom, then it is nice to have a much drier mushroom. I don't do deep fried mushrooms with stuff like chanterelles that are too wet. It works with matsutake. I've done it with, you know, farmed commercial shiitake. They're nice and dry. If you have a dry mushroom, you can batter it and fry it, but don't try to do it with a wet one. That's bad news. That'll make a mess, and you might burn yourself or burn down your house. Even worse. I'm just running a knife through these shiitake. I probably don't need all of them, but I don't want extras. But that pan is pretty full. I might call it a day after this one. And maybe I will save those other ones. They're a little smaller, so they might last a little bit longer. I plowed through sort of the biggest ones. And what happened was up in Washington last week, in Oregon and Washington, for a mushroom event. While I was gone, my neighbor was coming over to kind of house sit and take care of my plants, and I think she went in the backyard and discovered my shiitake logs had gone off. So if I had been here, I probably would have picked these shiitakes a little bit smaller, but I wasn't. So she was out there and pulled them and left them just sitting on my counter. And when I got home, there's a lot of spores there because the shiitakes had been sporing all over the place. It was pretty wild. Oh dear, my mic wire is all wrapped up in here. There we go. Okay. Hopefully that's not causing weird sounds. Okay. So, sorry about the view. I don't know if is anyone here on YouTube watch me stream. I haven't done very many cooking streams on here relative to like TikTok or Instagram. But I cook. I don't just tap mushrooms. I actually am a human being, and I need to eat food. So I do I do cook a fair bit. I haven't been live streaming anywhere near as much as I used to. I just haven't had the energy, motivation. You know, as I mentioned, the world kind of feels like it is, you know, very literally going to hell. And I'm trying to sympathize a little bit with the other side, because I feel like that's how they've been feeling for the last several years. But the reality of it is they just elected possibly like the worst human being in history in terms of just his moral character and other stuff. I'm not going to pretend he's worse than someone's committed genocide, but he's pretty freaking bad as human beings go. And for some reason, people, over half Americans, or some number of Americans, decided that he should be president. And that makes me want to vomit. I'm just, you know, worried. There's a lot of worrying things happening in the world right now. I ultimately hope things get better for everybody, but as has been stated by this incoming administration, things are going to get tough for some people for a while, and I think that's an understatement. So, again, I'm just going to do some cooking, and I'm sorry if the politic talk is turning you off from what I'm doing, but I think it's important to recognize what's happening in the world, at least to some degree. So, I'm just trimming up these green onions, getting them ready to go. All right. So basically I'm going to cook down all the mushrooms. I will add the pork. I will stir fry in a bunch of this bean paste stuff, and probably some like Sichuan chili crisp kind of things. I've got extra Sichuan chili and this like Korean dubujang, like dark bean paste, and I just got a bunch of stuff that I can like ramp up the amount of umami and spice. I have a couple different levers for that, including my homemade chili powder. And once all of the mushrooms and the pork and everything's kind of cooked in there, cooked down, I'm gonna like add these aromatics and the bean paste, and then add some liquid, and then throw in the tofu, and then I'll add sort of a cornstarch slurry and bring it all together as a gravy, and put over rice. And I need to start cooking some rice here in a second, but I am going to finish doing a little bit more prep while you guys can watch me. So there's the shiitake, making nice little squeaky noises. You hear that? I love that noise. Squeak a squeak a squeak. Good. Maybe I should have done my veg prep before I started live streaming, so we could have just been like a nice cooking show. But that's not very authentic, you know? That's me doing a bunch of work off camera and pretending that like, oh, someone else did this for me. No, screw that. I'd love to have a cooking show someday where someone actually does the prep work for me, but when I live stream, we're doing it together. It's kind of the point, you know? Because y'all can see how I chop, and you'll see that I am not a culinary student. I did not go to culinary school. If anything, and this is embarrassing to say, but I feel like I learned a lot of my chopping, just practical chopping from like Rachel Ray. I watched a lot of her like 30-minute meals back in the day. And like, you know, is Rachel Ray an amazing chef? Not particularly, but god damn it, she got food on the table. You know, that's what I liked about it. She was really like doing some interesting things with what you could cook pretty quickly. And none of her techniques were like amazing, but her ideas were solid. And she made a lot of things that were kind of like a version of like a gravy, basically. It was like you make like a chicken pot pie filling and then put it on something, or like put a biscuit topping or something like that on it and like bake it off for a little bit. And, you know, I could make this gravy and then I could use it to fill empanadas later. If I want little like Chinese pork mushroom empanadas, or I could, you know, I mean, I'm going to just spoon it over rice now, but it's a gravy or a stew. So you can do all sorts of things with it later on as a versatile ingredient, which I think is a fun way to treat leftovers, is to sort of reinvent them as something other than what they originally were. So I'm just trying to take this ginger down kind of as fine as I want. Sometimes I'll put in big pieces of ginger and then pull them out, but this one I'm trying to cut them into fairly thin batons, and then we'll do like a cross. Go across here, try to get nice little pieces. And this is, if I was a culinary student, I'd be doing this much more finely. But this is good enough. This is kind of the Rachel Ray thing, where you just like chop it until it's small enough, and a little rustic, and that's fine. That's fine. This snooty chef people can be upset, but I think most people just want to eat food, and most chefs just want to eat food. As long as it tastes good, who cares what the chop size of like all the little bits in there are, you know. This is a big pile of ginger. I don't know if I'll need all that, but I've got it all. Those are just doing their thing, but they're getting a little brown. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. I'm gonna turn the heat down just a second because I want to smash a little bit more of my prep here before I turn our attention to the pan and the pork and all the stuff. So I'm just gonna give these garlic cloves a quick whack, analogous to when you see Chinese chefs just like slap them with their side of the cleaver. I don't use a cleaver. I have a 7 or 8 inch santoku. This is my favorite knife. Pretty well balanced. I think it's by, is it Calcoflon? It's not like a super fancy knife. It's like a $40 knife you can buy on Amazon. I've been using the same one for like, I don't know, 10 years. Love it. I bought it for a bunch of friends too. And whether or not they use it when I go to the house, at least they have the knife that I want to use. So when I cook at someone's house, I will often buy them of a few things that I really like using at home and hope that they like using them. But even if they don't, at least they're in a drawer at their house. And I can use it. And usually if there's like a knife that doesn't get used in the regular rotation, it's like sharper and better shape too. So I can show up and be like, oh, sweet, my knife's like in good shape. Most of my friends I've gotten the knife for have actually used it though. So that feels good, you know. it's tough to get someone a gift and you come back, at some point later and see that it's like, it's never been unwrapped, or it's just like it never gets used because the person has their way of doing things. And I love giving gifts that are well received and used. And I'm not always like the best gift receiver, because people have certainly gotten me things over the years that I was like, I don't need this, and then like years later I discover it and I'm like, actually this is really useful. And I feel bad because then I'm not always like as nice as I should be at the moment when someone gives me something. I'm like, I don't need this, and then years later I have to text them and be like, hey, remember that thing? Thank you, by the way. But so it goes. I'm just very specific about the kitchen stuff I want and need. Okay. So our shiitakes doing their thing. They're starting to stick to the pan, which probably means it's time to drop in our pork. So I'll jack up the heat, get my pan really nice, and try to put a little sear on some of the pork. I think when you do Mapo tofu, traditionally you often just kind of cook the pork in liquid, but we're gonna try to put a little sear on it just because. So hang on, I'm trying to do too many things with not enough hands, so I'm just putting salt and some oil in the pan, so when I drop the pork in, it will hopefully start to sizzle. It's a little wet too, which is fine. That's just what happens. Actually, I have an idea. I'm gonna grab a tiny bit of sugar and we're gonna watch this technique. Okay. So I just put oil and salt in. I'm gonna add a little bit of sugar and just see if I can get it to caramelize for just like a second. Can add a little bit of depth of flavor, and in a Chinese dish like this, having some sugar in there is pretty normal to balance out all the spice and umami, and I'll probably add a little bit of black vinegar too to kind of offset everything. Okay. So really this is what I'm talking about, adding sugar. That's like a Vietnamese technique where you kind of make like a pan caramel. And I may not actually achieve that here because I'm looking at this and it's probably not hot enough. If I make it hot enough, it'll burn the mushrooms. I'll give it like a minute or two, see if I get the sugar to melt. And at least start on its way to the journey of being a caramel. You ever had shiitake before? Man, they're intensely savory. Like, they're probably the strongest flavored mushrooms to some degree. They're not as earthy as Agaricus bisporus, but they are wildly intense, and especially when dried. If you've had Japanese food, you definitely had shiitake because they use it in the dashi, and it's always in ramen broths and that kind of thing. I like doing, when I have a bunch of fresh shiitake and dried shiitake, I will put them all into, I'll rehydrate the dried ones and then use that liquid to make a shiitake stock with some, sugar and soy sauce and standard kind of teriyaki things, and drop in a bunch of fresh ones and boil it all down, and then I'll blitz it into kind of a brown looking goop paste and spread it out on my dryer tray, and then you dry it into like a mushroom leather, and you've just turned like the flavor of shiitake into a leather, which is really, really good. Very tasty. All right. Oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to jack the heat way up. I'm going to get this pan real hot before I put the pork in. That is what I was not ready for. All right. Now I'm watching, I'm paying attention, I can jack the heat up. When I was just hanging out before, it was worried about burning all this stuff, so I'll give it just a moment to really heat up. I'm going to let stuff go here. So I know this is not as exciting as seeing ingredient prep, but we got to cook the pork. It's part of the process. I'm just going to slice these up real quick. very carefully I will try to not touch my eyeballs after touching jalapeno, because I've done that too many times, and it hurts. Not fun. Okay. You can see the sugar starting to melt. That's a good sign. Not that much sugar in there to really make a caramel, but ooh, I can smell the shiitake really happening. Pan's getting really nice and hot, so it's time to drop this down. Oops. And again, this is really nice pork from a local farmer's market, and the guy humanely raises his pigs and all that kind of thing. So, and I know a lot of people would rather see like a fully vegetarian version of something, but this is how Mapo tofu is made in China. They use pork. That's just what they do. So I'm gonna get this all rendered down, and I'm gonna start sticking all the aromatics and other stuff too once the pork has started to really render and release its fat, because we want to draw the fat and try to create as much like browning umami kind of thing as we can. I'm also gonna like hack it by using soy sauce and a little MSG, and you know, mushrooms themselves have a lot of umami, so it's gonna taste real good. It's a savory, spicy gravy. It's one of my favorite things to eat. I'm not gonna wear gloves to cut up a couple of jalapenos. It's okay. I can wash my hands. Okay, we'll let that rip. Let that rip for a few, and let me cut these up. Going out for a rip, are you, bud? The Canadian classic, eh? All right. Put my mic back on so I can talk to you guys at a normal volume. If it sounds weird or I sound far away, it's because I put the mic on my stand and I'm like walking around. But right now I am tethered to my stand and the island in my kitchen, where my phone is set up. Which I don't mind, but I need to be careful when I have an idea and I'm like, oh my god, I gotta go run to the backyard and get an herb, and then I like flex myself because I'm connected by cable to you guys. Okay, pork is bubbling away nicely. I'm just going to let it continue to just be in the pan unmolested, untouched. What else? Oh, we got to prep green onions. That's the other aromatic. So often Mapo tofu will have some like carrots or peas in it. I think in China they probably use different vegetables, but that's what American Chinese restaurants have. I don't have any of those things, so we're gonna just do all the Chinese aromatics and none of the veggies. But there's a lot of mushrooms, and hopefully that's enough. I should really keep some frozen peas in the fridge. I might even have some in there, but they're buried far too deep with all the mushrooms to find anything at the moment. So we're gonna just work what we have, and this is it. So. And I'm fairly certain if I'd actually looked at a Mapo tofu recipe, it would tell me to be doing things differently. And if there was one I was going to follow, it would be like Fuchsia Dunlap. But I've made this dish a bunch of times, and this works out just fine. So this is how I'm doing it for now. I'll save the greens to add in once the rest of it has been cooked. But all of this will stir fry up real nice. Okay, let's check on our pork. You guys keep seeing my kitchen floor there. All right. Ooh, yeah, that looks nice. That looks real nice. That sugar added some nice browning. All of that looks good. The shiitake are getting real incorporated into that pork. And that is one of the reasons I love to cook meat and mushrooms together, because they have so much synergy from an ingredient standpoint and nutritional standpoint. And basically, I would argue you shouldn't eat meat unless you're also eating mushrooms at the same time. That's a little bit of an extreme statement. There's plenty of meat you can eat without mushrooms, but I would argue that anytime you are cooking meat from raw to cooked, it's probably worthwhile to throw a couple of mushrooms in there. I would say even with like processed meats, we eat a lot of things that have been blitzed into oblivion and then reset with like proteins, transglutaminase, like a chicken nugget. You could blitz in like 20% mushroom into a chicken nugget and make a chicken nugget that has less fat and tastes better, retains its moisture. Like, it would be almost imperceptible to people, but the big thing is you'd be adding fiber, dietary fiber to meat, which is what people who eat nothing but processed foods, like, they all get colon cancer and heart disease because there's no goddamn fiber in their food. Just eat some damn mushrooms. You'll be fine. You cure all your diabetes and stuff by just eating a couple of mushrooms every time you eat your meat. That's my soapbox. I don't need to get on it. I mean, I am. And this is my platform, so I'm going to soapbox as much as I want. But, here, I got a couple swillas from last night. We'll throw those in, too. I'll throw the porcini in a moment. Just letting this get nice and brown. Cheers. Let's see, what else? I need a spoon. Gotta get a spoon. Oh, rice. Okay, I'm going to put you guys down and start some rice. I'll be back. I'll give this a stir real quick. We're getting close to putting the aromatics in. Yes. Sorry, I had to go out to my car and retrieve my rice cooker because it was in there from a cooking demo I did up in Washington. Alright, that looks pretty good. Okay, cool, great. We got lots of umami, lots of browning. My rice is now in the works, which I really should have started before I got cooking, but, you know, brain stuff. Oop, I'm sorry. My phone was trying to get me to update my Apple Watch, and for some reason that freezes my live stream. So, thanks, Apple. Okay, now we're going to cook the shit out of these aromatics. A lot more oil. Aromatics go in. So we got ginger, garlic, chili, and green onion. I'm going to give that a nice, generous saute here. Okay, it's time to start adding some of the stuff that's going to make this really Sichuan and Mapo tofu-y. So this is Sichuan peppercorns, and I'm just giving them a little crush up. They are very floral and have a wonderful flavor, but they also numb the mouth. They have a very interesting type of spice, and I love them. And I think when you eat a lot of Chinese food, you get very addicted to Sichuan peppercorns, and you kind of crave that like numbing sensation. It's one of the reasons I love hot pot so much. But I do like breaking them up, because getting a big piece while eating is a little disconcerting and can be overpowering. But I don't mind leaving them, you know, kind of rough. Oh, Apple. The phone keeps trying to get me to update the Apple Watch, which is ridiculous, because I haven't used this phone actively with the Apple Watch in like 3 years. But whatever. Okay. We got this whole thing stirred up. I'm gonna come over here. A little more oil. I didn't want the aromatics to burn on the bottom, that's why I stirred it in, moving around. I'm gonna like shift my pan here too, so the oil is kind of right over the heat. I don't have a real wok, but I'm, you know, trying to manage my heat anyhow. So go in with the Sichuan peppercorn. Go in with a nice, healthy spoonful of my chili powder, which tastes pretty good. As I've learned many times when dealing with spicy stuff, you can always add more, but you can't add less. So it's sometimes wiser to add not quite as much as you think you might want, so that you can taste it and figure out how much you do want. Alright. These kind of stirred in. Push them to the side a little bit. I'm going to add this stuff. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's a fermented spicy bean paste. and it's kind of the core of this dish. So I'm going to put, ooh, that's spicy. Put a nice big spoonful of that in. To balance out that more spicy one, I'm going to use some of this black Korean bean paste, which is what they use for the noodles that went viral because of Squid Games. Remember what those are. So I like stir frying the bean paste and stuff like that a little bit on the heat to kind of develop and deepen the flavor a bit. And then this whole thing is going to get kind of soupy. I add some water here. And if I need more richness in the broth, I can either put more MSG. Well, I haven't put any MSG, but I put some in. I'll probably use porcini powder. In fact, I will definitely use porcini powder. And maybe a little chicken stock too if I need it. But I'll get this all incorporated, stirred in. And we'll go in with a little bit of liquid. Just because it's Chinese, I'm going to add a little bit of Sichuan cooking wine to it. I'll use the white one. So, just a little bit of that. Cooking wine helps to kind of aromatize all the flavors and really get everything incorporated. So, we want to turn this into a gravy. So I need some liquid to do that. Okay, now we're going to add in our porcini, which I cooked down last night, just plain with some salt. And now they're going to be a really wonderful textural addition to all these chewy bits of ground pork and chewy bits of shiitake. There'll be these sort of big, soft chunks of porcini, which will emulate a little bit the texture of the tofu. So that is playing with texture on many levels in a gravy like this. So I'm not worried about adding too much water here either, because I am going to use cornstarch to thicken this thing, not sicken this thing. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I'm just fighting a little bit of a cold, so it's on the mind. But I do highly recommend everyone out there get their flu vaccine and or COVID booster. I was at an event recently where a lot of people got COVID, and I didn't. I got my recent booster, and I was very happy that I got it, because I stayed healthy. But anytime you are around lots of people, it's the holiday season, and we're all going to be sick, have a sniffly nose. Okay, so I'm gonna let that come up to a boil rather. Sorry, my brain is all over the place right now. At least there'll be food for me in the not too distant future. That looks excellent. I'm gonna make a cornstarch slurry too to help thicken this whole thing up. I'm going to steal you guys away from the gravy train for just a moment. And we're going to just finish running a knife through our scallions here. There we go. Okay, so this will go on when it's almost done. I desperately wish that I had some peas or carrots or some kind of frozen veg or something else to dump into this that would make it like a little bit more friendly. I have some celery, but I feel like that would just make this like kind of kung pao chicken-esque, which maybe I don't hate. Maybe I'll throw in some celery. I know a lot of people don't like celery, but I love it. I think it's a great vegetable. And I'm cooking for me. I'm not cooking for anyone else, so I'm going to cook it the way that I want it. And that's a good thing to remember. If you're making a recipe and it has something you don't like, don't put it in. Or sub in something that you do like. You know? Make it for the way you want to eat it. Speaking of which, I am going to throw in a nice healthy pinch of MSG and a big old serving of porcini powder. Because that's how I like to eat it, with lots of umami. Oh, sorry, that's what I'm doing. Okay, throw that celery in. Not a lot, just one stalk. Just a little bit of crunchy texture in there. Alright, that's looking like a gravy. Hasn't really thickened up yet because I haven't added the cornstarch, but it is substantial. And it's looking good. I like that. No, a tablespoon of MSG would be way too much. I hope you're joking. And I hope it's also not an offensive joke, because I love Chinese food and grew up with a Chinese babysitter and have a lot of Chinese friends. So I adore real, authentic Chinese food, as well as, you know, American Chinese food is fine in its own way. I have been to China. I went to Hong Kong when I was like 6 before I got handed back to the British. That was a wild experience that can never be replicated. I went to Shanghai on a business trip, got treated all sorts of fancy Michelin star restaurant meals in China. That was cool. That made me feel like a big shot. To have someone like taking you out every night to like different fancy restaurants. I bet if I wanted to work for that Chinese company, they would probably hire me, but I don't want to live or work in China at the moment, unless there's mushrooms involved, so who knows? Who knows? My life may look very different when my book comes out, and I'll see what kind of opportunities come my way. For now, it's fun fermenting at home and making food and going mushroom hunting and tooling around with you guys. Okay, this is where I remember I have to actually put in the tofu. Woo! Tofu squirted at me. It's excited. Whoa! I love the way it slides out. So that's soft tofu. I have some firmer tofu that I'm going to actually cut up before I put it in. Add in all the tofu here. Oh god. Alright, I'm just gonna stir all this in at once. Normally I put the green onions in a little bit later, but it's all a mess on the board, so in it goes. I'm gonna hit this with some soy sauce. Let's see, do I have the Chinese soy sauce? I do, but we're just gonna use a little bit of the old Japanese one. A little extra salt in there. Man, my rice looks like it's all coming along. Should be pretty good. It's the fungi, that's why I didn't get COVID. Yeah, I actually attribute a lot of my good health to eating lots and lots of mushrooms. For sure. People should eat more mushrooms. Seems pretty obvious to me, but, you know, people are weirdly resistant to it. The number of times I've told people I'm into mushrooms and they're just like, oh, that's cool for you. I don't eat mushrooms, or I don't like mushrooms, or like some sort of, it's not always holier than thou. Like a lot of people are like, I want to like mushrooms, but I don't. And I'm like, that's okay. There's so many different kinds of mushrooms for you to try that you've probably never had. There's so many different preparations and recipes and like ideas on ways you can eat mushrooms differently than the way you've had them before and that you didn't like, you know. I'm gonna add some extra water here, make sure we get enough gravy to go around. Not that I'm feeding a crowd, but per usual, I've made enough food for like 6 people. Sigh. Like I said, I could use this stuff as like an empanada filling or something. It's probably not empanada. It's a little too loose for that, but it's a gravy. I could make a pot pie out of it, you know. Make a little scallion biscuit and bake it off as a Chinese tofu pork mushroom pot pie kind of thing. I know that would be pretty nice, eh? You want to eat it? Good, so do I. I wish you could eat it because I've got too much and I don't want to eat all of this alone. But that's my life right now, so. So I'm just going to let this like get hot basically, and we're pretty much done, and we're going to taste it. Remember to always taste your food. Hopefully it tastes okay. And if not, I will add more bean paste or more chili or more salt or, you know, whatever. It does taste pretty good. Ooh. And it numbs me out the way that it's supposed to. I think anything I could make it like a little bit spicier, but I might do that by adding like chili. Oh, you know what? Actually, I know the one chili thing I did not put in here was this Fly by Jing extra spicy Sichuan chili oil. Ooh, wow, that's hot. Wow, I can see why I have so much of this one left, because it slaps. Okay, so I'm going to stir this up. And I won't put too much in, because I would just blow out my taste buds. But I'm going to put 1 solid spoonful. Stir that in, and then taste. And nice, thick, goopy gravy with the porcini, and the shiitake, and the ground pork. Lots of green onion and garlic and ginger. Nice savory bean paste gravy. And a delicious looking Mapo tofu. I love this dish. It's so good. It's so wholesome. Thanks for everyone hanging out with me while I made this. Sometimes I don't live stream because I feel like it's going to be too much of a process, you know, when I was like running around making the rice and getting random things, but you know, it's better that I record this than not, I guess. Someone somewhere might watch it and learn something. Hopefully you did, and you enjoyed being here. Oh my god, that's good. Tofu, mushroom, pork, rice, gravy. Yes. That's fucking fire. Hot damn, I love food. I felt despondent and sad and weird all goddamn day, but apparently I just needed to make some Mapo tofu. That's why I love cooking. Because everything can seem wrong in the world, and then some food hits your lips, and you're just like, oh my god, I just needed to eat. Oh, woe is me. The problems of the world are not solved, but in this brief period of time, everything is okay because I got this spicy gravy. Ooh. You like those noises? Yeah. Making some good noises for me. Thanks, buddy. Okay, that looks like it's done. I'm gonna turn that off. It's nice and thick. Spoon this over some rice. Give you guys a little look at the final dish here. So it's kind of a goopy dish, you know, but there's a lot of interesting textures layered in there between the shiitake and the boletes. And I use both firm and soft tofu. Yeah, that looks pretty great. I love it. I am so happy I have learned how to cook and I can make food like this for myself, especially when I feel a little bit down, because this is self-care. And eating lots of mushrooms is only going to make you feel better, you know? So I hope everyone gives this a shot and enjoyed the live stream. I'm going to go eat my food. Looks pretty good. Okay. Bye, everyone. Have a good night. Adios.